Time did not fold with violence. There was no shock, no vertigo, only silence. When my paws touched the dry, hot soil, I felt a world that still had no name. Wind crossed bare hills, and the sky seemed larger than any other I had ever seen. There were no cities, no roads, only earth, stone, and humanity in its rawest state. I stood in a time before what we call history, before writing, before agriculture, before cities. Humans lived in small mobile groups, following the seasons, tracking herds, gathering what the land offered freely. Nothing there suggested permanence. Everything was motion and passage, yet something stood out. On a gentle rise, I saw constant movement. People were carrying stones far too large for a common camp. It was not shelter, it was not hunting, it was construction. And in that time, this should not exist. I approached cautiously. No one seemed to notice my presence. Not because I hid, but because that was not an era when observant cats had a place in human stories. I was a detail of the landscape, one shadow among many. The place was Göbekli Tepe, a name that would only emerge thousands of years later when archaeologists found the buried site. To those people, it was simply a mound in the landscape, chosen for reasons beyond immediate survival. And that alone was strange. Here, before any permanent village, before any cultivated field, someone decided to erect something that did not feed the body. Something built for the mind, for the spirit, or for a deeper longing. The need for meaning. At the center of the place, T-shaped stone pillars rose against the sky. They were enormous, carved from single blocks, weighing many tons. There was no metal, no wheels, no draft animals, only hands, ropes, levers, and the kind of persistence that lasts generations. The pillars were covered in relief carvings: foxes, snakes, boars, vultures, animals that hunt, threaten, observe. Almost no plants, no human face. It was a world where animals dominated the narrative carved into stone. In the fading light, I could see these were not improvised scratches. The lines were firm, repeated, standardized. There was style, proportion, visual hierarchy. Someone had learned to sculpt there, and continued teaching others to do the same. Around it, emptiness. No densely occupied village, no cluster of stone houses, just a few simple shelters nearby, closer to camps than a city. The monument stood ready long before any clear trace of urban life. This inverted the story we like to tell. We imagine villages first, then cities, then temples. Here, the temple seemed to come before everything. The architecture of the sacred preceded the architecture of everyday life. I realized that the question, how did they build this, was important, but secondary. The deeper question was, what was so urgent, so necessary, that it justified raising massive stones before even ensuring a stable life? They were hunter-gatherers. They depended on hunting, gathering wild plants, and knowledge of the land. They had no kings, permanent armies, or cities. Yet here they were, gathered around a project that transcended immediate survival. To build Göbekli Tepe required coordination of tasks, division of labor, planning of time. It needed many to accept dedicating effort to something you could not eat or wear. That demands more than necessity. It demands belief. No one carries massive stones out of curiosity. There was a shared idea, perhaps a worldview, perhaps a common anxiety about the unknown. A promise that if these stones stood firm, the world would make more sense. I looked at their sunburned faces. I saw no panic. I saw focus. Repeated gestures passed hand to hand. There was reverence for the space these stones defined. Entering was not neutral. It was crossing a symbolic threshold. They did not write, but they remembered. Memory was made of spoken stories, repeated gestures, paths traversed. Instead of recording the everyday, they carved symbols capable of crossing millennia. Göbekli Tepe was less a tool and more a message. In that space, human organization did not appear as a means to farm, but as a means to mean something. Gathering was not just survival. It was saying together, we are here, and this has significance. For centuries, we taught that religion arose to organize cities and states. First agriculture, then surplus, then temples and gods to legitimize power. Göbekli Tepe turned that sequence upside down. Perhaps it was not the city that created the sacred. Perhaps it was the sacred that summoned the city. The need for ritual, for gathering, for speaking to something greater may have brought people together before any wall, plaza, or marketplace. The central pillars were anthropomorphic figures without faces. Arms, hands, belts. Sometimes animals hanging from them, but no carved gaze. They were anonymous presences, more ideas than individuals. Forces, not characters. We do not know what name they gave them. Perhaps they used no names, but it is clear they saw more than stone there. That organized space, body, and fear. It said where silence begins, where to speak low, where to look up. And there were no wheat fields nearby. Before the harvest, already there was an altar. Before writing, already there was a symbol. Instead of asking protection for crops, they seemed to ask for order in an unpredictable world. Göbekli Tepe does not explain religion's origin alone, but it suggests that perhaps it is not a byproduct of city life. It might be the opposite. The city was born to sustain an ancient desire to gather around something untouchable. The place was not used all the time. It awakened at specific moments. Groups came from afar, bringing food, stories, tensions, and alliances. It seemed less a dwelling space and more a stage for scheduled encounters. Large numbers of animals were killed and consumed there. Feasts, banquets, celebrations. Eating together before the pillars transformed meat into narrative. Food became argument. We belong to the same circle. I found no clear signs of warfare linked to the place. I saw spears, yes, but aimed at game, not at people. I saw more cooperation than conflict. Göbekli Tepe seemed a center of convergence, not a fortress. No one claimed ownership of the space. There were no thrones, no houses pressed against the central circle. The place belonged to all who accepted the ritual, and to no one in particular. It was common, but not ordinary. I observed from a distance, respecting invisible boundaries. I knew that place was not a stage for my presence, but for theirs. Sometimes being a witness is simply this: to be silent and watch. It was a world without written treaties, but with implicit agreements. Göbekli Tepe functioned as a stone reminder that even before law, there were already limits, gestures, and silences that everyone understood. After much time of use, something changed. Gradually, the circles of stone began to fill. Earth was thrown inward. What had been carefully exposed began to be covered. It was not natural collapse. It was human work. Mixed with the soil were bones, fragments of tools, remains of feasts. It was like closing a book, page by page, until nothing remained legible on the surface. Burying is a strong decision. Burying something so labored is stronger still. They did not try to destroy the pillars. They simply made them disappear from sight, as if the time coming next was not ready to look at them. Perhaps the ritual moved elsewhere. Perhaps new symbols emerged, better suited to villages, crops, another form of life. Perhaps that model of gathering had already fulfilled its purpose. What seemed like an end was preservation. The soil protected the carvings from wind, rain, complete forgetting. Without the earth that covered them, the images of foxes, snakes, and vultures would never have reached us. There are forgettings that kill and forgettings that keep. Göbekli Tepe knew the second kind. It was hidden not to disappear, but to sleep until another era could find it again. For more than 10,000 years, Göbekli Tepe remained buried. Above it, humanity invented agriculture, the city, the empire, the alphabet, currency, philosophy, the marketplace, the court. Meanwhile, the stone circle stayed motionless under layers of earth. Pharaohs were buried in pyramids. Cities rose and burned. Maps were redrawn countless times. And no one imagined that beneath a quiet mound in Anatolia slept a temple older than any written myth. The silence did not erase the question carved into the stones. It only delayed the moment when someone would hear it again. Sometimes history falls silent, so another part can speak first. When archaeologists began excavating the site in the late 20th century, they quickly realized they stood before something unprecedented in scale. The dates did not match the books. What stood upright was older than civilization itself. Theories had to be revised. Straight lines became curves. The notion that we first lived peacefully, then philosophized, lost its simplicity. Göbekli Tepe reminded us that sometimes we philosophize precisely because there is no peace. The stones do not argue. They do not answer. They simply exist. And their existence forces questions for which no one has a fully comfortable answer. Göbekli Tepe forces us to admit that perhaps we began differently than we would like to believe. Perhaps we are not, in essence, economic animals who later invented gods. Perhaps we are, from the start, symbolic animals. These stones suggest that the impulse to create meaning came alongside, or even before, the impulse to accumulate. That we gathered to tell stories and face the unknown, and only later to measure fields, raise walls, and debate borders. This does not make the world simpler. Quite the opposite. If the sacred comes first, the line between faith and politics, between myth and social organization, becomes more tangled. And perhaps it always was. History ceases to be a staircase climbing toward progress. It becomes a spiral. We repeat ancient questions in new languages. We return to places we did not know we had visited before. Standing before Göbekli Tepe, I knew I was not there to understand everything. I was there to witness the size of the question. Sometimes learning is accepting that some things remain larger than any answer. Some places exist to remind us that we are not the beginning of anything. We are simply those who, for a brief moment, can see a little deeper into the darkness. If you want to keep traveling with me through moments that shaped humanity and through stories older than written memory, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Time holds secrets we are still learning to hear. I will be there to observe them with you. Until the next episode,